Psalms where Brother Campbell read from. At the writing of this psalm by David. David is now an old man. And the proof of that is in verse 25 of that same text, same chapter. David said, I've been young, and now I'm old. So he's an old man. He said, and I've yet have not seen the righteous, nor a seed begging bread. So David is going to, in this text, in this psalm, David is going to address a problem. And he's going to, the problem that David is going to address is, why do the wicked seem to prosper while the righteous suffer? That's the problem he's going to address. But this is not the only psalm that David addresses this issue. So it must be one of those issues that over and over again, he just keeps thinking about it and he keeps addressing God. Why do good people who try to live right, who try to do right and serve, why do they suffer, and the one who is all behind his back and deceitful seem to prosper? So David is struggling with this issue. He writes about it in the 73rd division of Psalms. He writes about it in the 49th division of Psalms. The same issue. And not only that, whether we will admit it or not, it's a problem with some of us. Amen. We struggle from time to time. Wondering why when I go to worship and when I praise and when I give as I prosper, and here is not out in the street, but the guy sitting next to me is doing just the opposite. And it seems like he's prospering and I'm digressing. So we have that. And what comes from that, when that happens, and that's why we are our brother's keeper, church. That's why we have to be careful how we behave. But folk watch us. They watch us. Some folks, they need to look at you and see what kind of clothes you got. Most people never notice what kind of clothes you got on. You know what they notice most? Your behavior. Your attitude. Now, they can tell you what kind of attitude you had. They say, boy, old Coffey's attitude sure stunk it up today. What kind of suit you had? I don't know, but he had a funky attitude. They don't care nothing about what you're wearing. It's about how you behaving. And that hurts people. And what that does in the congregation of God's people, and what that does is when people it creates this air of envy. Amen. And people who are not mature, who see things like this, especially when it's when someone who is struggling and coming up the rough side of the mountain trying to obey God, and see somebody else who doesn't care anything about the house of God and the worship service, them prospering, it creates an air of envy. So for a few minutes, I want to talk to us about steps in the peace in the path of righteousness. You know what steps lead to the path of righteousness? There ought to be some steps. When I say steps, not steps here, but there ought to be a path that we're going to take to create an air of righteousness. And it starts with how you control. How you control who you are. Amen. Control, with emphasis. There's certain control. You ought to have certain control. I heard Christopher say this morning, and that's interesting. I like to hear people. I've been here over 50 years and noticed certain things. But all of us have experienced something like this. Yeah. And every day, every one of us, we're struggling against something that we've been struggling against all our life. Whether it's 50, 40, or 60. Some of us been the same way 60 years. I'm going to help you. And so when David writes this Psalms, David himself had these issues. And yet God had blessed David to come through some of his physical struggles, some of his most sinful struggles. And now David has somewhat reached a pinnacle in his life and is looking back. Any of you ever look back? And as he looks back, he begins to take inventory. I do this even when I don't want to. I do this. I look back and I say, I just said it this way, Lord, I wish, why didn't I when I was younger learn to, why didn't I learn when I was younger a skill? Amen. Well, why didn't I learn a skill? Why did I wait till I get this old to look back and see that there are certain things that I can arrange differently? Sometimes you don't realize that until you're back. But David stopped. Not once he realized he would, but every once in a while, life will force you to take an inventory. Whether you want to or not, the way you live your life will force you to look back. That's when certain folk don't want to be bothered with you no more. People don't, my babies don't come around like they used to. Well, maybe it's you. Amen. So David is trying to find the essence of this answer in the text. And he says, fret not thyself because of evildoers.
Neither be thou
envious. He said, neither be envious
against the workers of iniquity.
Against the workers. In other words, you got your mind should be bigger than that. The picture is bigger than that. You can't get caught up in what somebody else is doing or not doing. Amen. And ultimately, David is saying, we ought to trust God in everything. Amen. He said,
for they shall soon be cut down.
He said, they soon going to be cut down.
Like the grass. And wither as the green herb.
And wither as the green herb. He says,
trust in the Lord and do good. So shall thou dwell in the land.
Now, that's where we should be at. I shouldn't worry about what Junebug or whoever is sitting on the pew. I need to have a relationship with me and God. He said, trust in the Lord. And we can trust in the Lord. It helps us to have a better understanding of our walk in God. Paul said we walk by faith, not by sight. Paul says in Romans 8:28, he said all things work together. See, you have a bigger picture. You have a better understanding. When you stop focusing on what stop and take inventory of you. Don't worry about what somebody else is not doing or doing. They always doing it. So what? What can you do to stop them from doing it?